Great. Thank you so much, Arlen. And we really appreciate you inviting us to be here today and share a little bit about SEL with you all. So I try and practice what I preach, and that means taking a leaf out of Castle's book, and I'll reference Castle probably several times throughout this presentation. One of their 3 signature practices is starting off engagements with an inclusion activity. And so these are things I do in all of my webinars. You can do them with your youth when they first come into your room, or with your staff whenever you get together as a group as adults. So my inclusion activity today, and you can answer in the chat, is what did you want to be when you were a kid? So as Arlen mentioned, Arlen wanted to be a ninja, yes. My neighbor, he's dressing up as a ninja. He's 7, but yeah, he's got a pretty great costume. Set the webinar chat to everyone and share with us what you wanted to be. I see a singer, I see a rockette, people after my own heart. I come from a background of theater. I wanted to be a Broadway actor. I see a teacher always. Yay, Jenny, living out your dream. A lawyer or teacher. Look how many of you went into education. That's awesome. An architect, a lawyer or a teacher. Awesome. This is one, there's always a reason. I try and be intentional with the inclusion activities we start with. And I like this one because I want us to start thinking like our students, right? Thinking like our youth. So putting yourself in the mindset of where were you at when you were a kid? What were the things you were thinking about or that were important to you? Never thought you would be a teacher, Susan. Yeah, you know, that happens sometimes, right? Life surprises us. All right, great. Well, thanks so much for engaging in that activity with me. I want to start by going over our agenda, what the plan is for our hour together today. We're starting with the welcome. I'll go over some of our objectives and introductions. Then I like to do a little bit of level setting. If you're not familiar with ACT Now, sharing who we are and why we're on talking about SEL. Then we'll get into the bulk of our presentation, which is a panel discussion with 2 of our guests here today. We have a little activity and I'll share out some resources. We should have time for Q&A afterwards. And to wrap up, we'll end with an optimistic closure, which is, again, one of Castle's 3 signature practices. We have 3 goals for today. By the end of the webinar, we hope to understand a little bit more about SEL and its role in the educational space. I hope that we can identify some opportunities for youth socialization and self-exploration. And finally, we'll analyze some tools and resources and activities that will help affirm youth identity. Just to do some quick introductions, we have 2 panelists on here today, Osvaldo Rivera from the Puerto Rican Cultural Center and David Beal from the Center on Halstead. And you will hear a little bit more from them later on. My name is Lesley Rivers. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the program coordinator at ACT Now. If you're not familiar with ACT Now, it stands for After School for Children and Teens Now, and we are a statewide coalition that works towards ensuring all youth in Illinois have access to high quality and affordable out-of-school time opportunities. So we work really closely with after-school program providers. We also work a lot with community schools. We do this work in a variety of ways. We have a really strong legislative policy and advocacy arm, so we know that we cannot continue supporting high quality educational programs without funding support from the state, so we do a lot of advocacy work. We also do a lot of professional development opportunities, and this webinar today actually came out from our longer SEL webinar. Every year we do an SEL webinar series, and this is one of the webinars that we did last year. And then we also share a lot of free resources for those in the field. So my last slide in this slide deck that we'll share out with you is just a bunch of links to resources that we hope will be useful for you and your youth and staff. You can see in this first graphic kind of some examples of the people and the organizations that make up our coalition: state agencies, educators, youth organizations, community advocates, all of those are a part of it. The middle graphic is our resources guide. So I will actually copy the link and share that in the chat so that if you want to pull that up, that just gives you a little bit of access to some of our most popular resources. And then if you're interested in joining our coalition officially, you can sign up for our free weekly newsletter. That's the best way to stay up to date on funding opportunities and professional development opportunities that are targeted towards out of school time. So you can either scan that QR code or I put the link for that in the chat. All right, so to help guide our conversation today, I want to hear a little bit more about who is on the call today and what your experiences might be with SEL. So I'm going to do a little Mentimeter. You can scan this QR code or I will copy the link and put it in the chat. So you can click that Menti. It should be up and going. And the first slide I have on here is a map of Illinois, and you can take the little flag pin and you can drop it on where you are in Illinois. So we can get an idea of where people are coming from. And once we get some submissions, I'll switch my screen share so we can actually see what people's answers are. So either scan the QR code, you can click the link in the chat, and that should take you to the map and the Mentimeter. And great, we got some submissions coming in. So I'm gonna go ahead and switch over here. All right, looks like we've got people from kind of all over the state, which is really cool. I was expecting to see at least a few from Chicago, right? That's not a huge surprise. I'm based in Chicago, so I hear that, I feel that. Got some people in central Illinois, some people down in maybe the East St. Louis area. Looks like someone might be from Indiana. I see one dot that is off the chart, so I'm going to guess we have an out-of-state friend joining us. Welcome. This is helpful too because it lets me know that it looks like we have some urban people joining us. We have some from rural locations and maybe some suburban locations as well. So a good representation of the state. Okay, next, I'm wondering what grades do you serve? So I broke them down in chunks. You can select all that apply. And trying to get an idea if we're mostly elementary school, mostly middle school, mostly high school. That'll help guide some of the answers to our questions during our panel discussion. So far, pretty even across the board. Oh, a few more high school folks joining us. That's cool. We know in the after school space, high schoolers tend to be the ones that are forgotten about. So that's good to know. We'll try and gear some of our answers and questions towards maybe some of those older youth that you all are serving. Yeah, mostly high schoolers. Okay, cool. Good to know. All right, this one is going to be a short response. So you can type in like a couple sentences or a couple phrases. But I'm curious, how are your youth doing right now? We're a couple months into the school year. You know, I know last year we heard from our members that youth were still pretty dysregulated. There was still a lot going on coming out of COVID. A year later, where are your youth? How are they doing right now? So far, I'm not too surprised. I'm seeing David's face, and I'm guessing he's getting similar things from his youth. But we're hearing that there's still a lot of dysregulation, right? There's lots of instances of depression. There's still a lot of anxiety as they're grappling with. I see lots of home and environmental issues. Someone does say they seem to be doing slightly better in terms of emotional regulation. So good on you all who are working with those youth and helping them get to that point. They're hanging in there. Great. I mean, we all are, right? Still lethargic, trying to do as little as possible. Yeah, still dysregulated, having a lot of social emotional challenges. Some are still recovering from the pandemic, but all are in flux. I appreciate that. Thanks for sharing. Mostly still engaging in school. That's good. Several are going through a lot of mental health issues and finding their way. Yeah, another hanging in there. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, and I'll commend you all for being here and looking for resources, right, to help out your youth and to help regulate everyone's emotions a little bit more. I see slowly getting better, but still several need targeted resources and support. Yep, struggling with anxiety, chronic absences. Yeah, we've heard about that a lot. Changed our school format this year to an international focus due to low performance. Hopefully it is a change for the better. We have more title services and behavioral support this year. I really appreciate hearing how you all flexed and adjusted to the needs of your youth in your community. Someone's retired, but an author. Okay, cool. All right, great. And I think I've got one more slide for us. This one's going to be a word cloud. So the more people write the same word, it gets bigger, right? So my question is, what do you think of when you hear SEL? It can be the definition, it can be a word association. What's the first thing that pops to your mind? Oh, misunderstood. Interesting. I wonder if you mean like the term SEL is misunderstood, or it refers to people who are misunderstood and therefore they're tapping into social emotional learning resources. Support, I like that. Cool. Here we go. Social emotional learning, communication. Thanks for calling that out. Trying, emotions, important. It is important. Helpful, overcoming. Nice. Resilience, solutions. Support is nice and big, so it tells me lots of people are putting support on there. Discussion, collaboration, I like that. Needs being addressed, social skills, important is kind of big, so it looks like several people put that on there. Modifications, cool. Support, important. Social emotional learning still seem to be our biggest ones. Engagement. I see lost came up there. Breath, inclusion. I like that. Dysregulated emotions. Adaptive. Oh, that's awesome. Learning to listen. Commonalities. This is great, y'all. Necessary, helpful. Cool. I'm still seeing that support is the biggest word, which means that was the one that got the most response. So, I'll just draw this connection for us that even though our youth are struggling and they're dysregulated, we're recognizing that social emotional learning skills and tools can be used to help support them. Great. Thank you all for engaging in that with me. I am going to transition back to our slide deck and let's get into some content here. Cool. So you mentioned this in our word cloud. SEL stands for social emotional learning. And this is the long definition that CASEL uses. And for those of you who are not familiar, CASEL, which stands for the Collaboration for Academic and Social Emotional Learning, they are actually based in Chicago, and they are a research and professional development institute that helps support people in learning more about and accessing SEL resources. So I'll reference them a lot, and I've got a lot of resources from them that I think can be really helpful. So you can see their definition involves the process through which young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop. And then they kind of list these things that are associated with SEL: developing healthy identities, managing emotions, achieving goals, feeling and showing empathy for others, establishing and maintaining supportive relationships, and making responsible and caring decisions. And those things that they list at the end really come from the castle wheel. This is one of my favorite graphics. I use it all the time. In the resources we share out, I'll give you kind of a infographic and page that dives into this really deeply. And I have it in English and in Spanish. So it's something that you could share with your families and community members. So you'll see in the center here, we have what are called the core competencies. And the colors actually matter and mean different things. So the two orange competencies are intrapersonal skills. So those are things that are occurring within us. They have self-awareness, which you can also think of as identity. And that is a lot about recognizing your own thoughts and emotions. The other interpersonal skill is self-management. You can also think of agency. So how do you regulate your emotions and behavior? The green competencies are interpersonal skills. So those are things that are happening with other people. So they have social awareness, which can also be thought of as belonging. And that is about the ability to empathize. Then we have relationship skills, and their kind of other word phrase for this is collaborative problem solving. And when that was first shared with me by someone who works at Castle, they were like, I didn't really see the connection at first. But if you think about establishing and maintaining healthy relationships, that's all about, problem solving and being collaborative with other people. You can't have and build those relationships without maybe addressing some things that you think of differently or you feel differently about. And then our yellow competency is both inter and intrapersonal, and that's responsible decision making. They also think of it as curiosity. So this is about making caring and constructive choices across diverse situations. So in addition to those core competencies, the Castle Wheel also recognizes the different key settings where SEL happens. And those are the blue concentric circles that move out from the competencies. So the first one you have, oh, the links are not working. Oh, you know what? We recently, that's good to know. We recently updated our website, and I bet those are the old links. So I will make sure the correct links are in the slide deck when I send that out. Thanks so much for pointing that out. So the blue circles we have are the different key settings where SEL happens. And it starts with the classroom, the smallest setting, right? That's where SEL instruction is implicit and explicit. And it also is where you build a classroom climate, right? Then we move out to the school. What is your school-wide culture? What are the practices and policies, not only for the youth across the school, but for all the adults who work in and with the students in the school? Then we have families and caregivers, and that comes down to authentic partnerships. How are you working together? And finally, their wider community, and that's looking at the aligned learning opportunities. Where can they get out and practice these skills in the wider community? So as I mentioned earlier, this webinar was initially part of a larger SEL webinar series on youth socialization as a whole. We were hearing a lot from our members throughout the past year that youth were pretty dysregulated coming out of the disruptions and the isolation from the pandemic. So we had a 3-part series. We started with youth and self. So figuring out how can they affirm their own identities. We know that when youth and adults practice SEL, they practice those socialization skills. So we started with self, then we talked about youth and other youth, then we talked about youth and community, or youth and all the adults that they interact with. So SEL allows them to practice those socialization skills and build upon those. By providing a space for SEL in schools or in after school or in any educational setting, you're giving youth an outlet for learning about themselves. In addition, SEL specifically can help youth explore and affirm their gender, cultural, and racial identities. And that's kind of going to be the bulk of our conversation today. So I'm going to invite Osvaldo and David to join me here for our discussion. Thanks so much, both of you, for being here. And I'm going to stop sharing so we can see each other. Great. And I want to start with allowing you each to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your programs and the type of youth that you serve. Osvaldo, would you like to start?
Sure. Hi, my name is Osvaldo Rivera. I'm a referral coordinator at the Puerto Rican Cultural Center, and that is located in the Humboldt Park section of Chicago. And we have a program called Teen Reach in the Puerto Rican Cultural Center that serves 100 youth with after-school programming as well as summer camp activities, ranging from the ages of kindergarten all the way to high school students. So we have two sites, Bernard Moose, which is an elementary school on California Avenue, as well as Roberto Clemente High School, also in Humboldt Park.
Great, thanks. David, you want to tell us a little bit about you and the programming you all do?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is David Beal. My pronouns are he, him. I'm the Director of Youth and Family Services at Center on Halsted. Center on Halsted is Chicago's LGBTQ plus community center. And as Director of Youth and Family Services, I oversee a wide range of programming for youth and families with kids 0 to 24 years old. The bulk of our programming is for 12 to 18-year-old. That's kind of we focus on, but we do offer some monthly family programs for families with young kids, and we have a weekly peer-led social / support group for 19 to 24-year-olds. But for our school age youth, there are basically 7th through 12th graders. We have a twice a week LGBTQ plus affirming drop-in space. It's just a place where they could come after school, hang out, make friends, be gay. And then we offer 2 other youth groups after that. One is specifically for trans and gender non-binary and gender expansive youth. And the other is for all youth on the LGBTQ plus rainbow, no matter what your identity is. And this is that group has the same kind of purpose for them to make friends, build community, develop their identities, but they're more structured, and we have more guided activities and discussions for the youth. Yeah, and then we also offer a whole range of other programming. We have a mentoring program, we have a youth advisory board, we do a whole range of arts programming, including a drag education program. It's a real smorgasbord of activities supporting young people.
Great, thank you. So I think one of the first things that we can do for helping youth to explore and affirm their identities is creating welcoming spaces when they first enter the room or the space. So Osvaldo, how do you all create those welcoming spaces?
Yeah, the challenge that we face is that we are working within the confines of a school setting and not our own center, our own space. So one of the ways that we do our best work with that point in particular is to try to secure a classroom that is only ours, and we're not sharing with anyone else, in order to decorate it, get bean bags, and create the comfortable environment that is specific to our program, as opposed to it's just another period of school afterwards, so they're coming into our classroom and it's more like we're going to Teen Reach as opposed to going another class. So yeah.
And I wonder, is that something that you all walk in, you're like, we're going to put this here and we're going to hang this poster here, or do you have the youth involved in some way in that decoration of that
A little
room?
bit of both, absolutely. And that's it. Part of programming is trying to kind of kill time and figure out, you know what I mean? Intentional killing of time. And so giving the youth the power and the license to decorate their own space goes a whole long way. And then, you got the calendar year with various themes that can be explored. So it's an endless possibilities.
Yeah, thank you. David, what do you all do to create a welcoming space when youth first come to you all?
Sure. Well, we do have the luxury of having our own space. That's ours 24/7. And so, it comes from everything. It comes from having, comfortable furniture that youth feel comfortable sitting on, couches, bean bags, chairs and tables that are the right size for them. We also make sure, I there's so many ways. So I'm trying to think what to think of next. Things that we do also is also the sound environment. One of the things we have, we keep a Spotify playlist of music that we play during program that is all from that is all through youth. There's a QR code that when they come in, if you want to add a song to the playlist, you can add it. So youth are the ones who are in control of the music that we hear in the space. On one of the walls, there's a huge wall that we have. We call it our Queer Futures Board. And what it is they're all 8.5 by 11 placards of different queer people, mostly queer people of color who are under 40 years old. They're like YouTube influencers and activists and actors and artists and sports people, but young queer folk that are making a difference in society today. And it has a picture of them, has a quote by them, and then a QR code where you can go to their Instagram or their social media or their website. And it's always great when youth come in. They'll for the first time they'll go over to the board, and we probably have like 40 of them up by now. And they'll look at that and they'll be like, "Oh, I know that person. I don't know that person. Or who's that one?" And they'll talk and have conversations and be excited. We also have on the artwork on the walls that's reflective of queer and trans experiences, photographs and paintings of queer people who have made an impact on history. Everyone from Marsha P. Johnson, Sylvia Rivera, to a local Chicago activist named Mama Gloria, who's really important in our community up here in Chicago. Yeah, those are all things. I guess those are a whole bunch of things that that we do.
I wonder if I can ask a follow-up question to that. You all describe the spaces and how what you do physically. What about for your staff? How do you train or encourage the staff to welcome youth into the spaces?
Sure. Oh, that's definitely an ongoing process. The most important thing for us is that staff are willing and able to meet youth where they're at. The youth who come to our program are off at various stages in their identity development and just growing up in general. We tend to focus on their gender and sexuality identities because that's the focus of our organization. But of course, there's a whole other range of things that are going on with young people. But we get youth it's their very first time coming into a queer space. It's their very first time being around other queer trans youth their same age. To youth who have a very vibrant life and have lots of friends who are queer or trans, and that's just par for the course for them. So it's important for us to make sure that our staff is able to meet youth where they're at, to not to engage with them on a level that's age appropriate and that's with their own comfort level. And so we do trainings like trainings on everything from boundary setting to youth mental health first aid to trauma informed care, to all these things, just to help make sure that we we can support youth where they're at, and with the recognition that where they're at today is probably very different from where they're going to be 3 months, 6 months, a year from now, and that we still have to meet them where they're at that time as well.
Yeah, for us, I think trauma-informed care is very important. I want to thank Act Now and a lot of the trainings that you guys have that we have participated in. I'm currently not working with Teen Reach anymore. I've transitioned into a different program that deals with a different population. But my time in Teen Reach was wonderful. And so in terms of something that I appreciated with the Puerto Rican Culture Center and the training of their staff was a big focus on vicarious trauma, on trauma-informed care, and those type of things, and giving us the opportunity to share amongst ourselves so that we aren't burnt out based off of just dealing with the tough reality that our youth are facing in the city of Chicago right now.
Cool. What are some activities that you all have found help youth build social skills?
Cool. I heard you mention that you were from the theater world, and that's definitely my background as well. And I feel like art in education is so important. It gives us a license to express ourselves and gives us an opportunity to look at our circumstances through various perspectives. So in terms of identity, I come from a writing background, and poetry is a great way of introducing that to young people. One of the exercises that I do when I'm providing programming is I ask the youth to, I feel that we are a product of our influences and our experiences. And those things change along the way. Like David mentioned earlier, we have to meet our youth where they are at that particular time, right? One of the things that has helped me to combat writer's block and things like that is to kind of have this running list of things that I find important in my life, or experiences, influences. And then I'll give an example. For an example, so I'll ask them to take a piece of paper and I ask them to keep this extremely personal. Don't share it with your peers. This is about you. I don't want you to share it. Put that in a box somewhere, like after you're done, and refer to it whenever. But I asked them to write their name on a piece of paper, their date of birth, their nickname, where they're from, the neighborhood they grew up in. And then I asked them to write a list of, let's say, 10 things, 10 of the most influential experiences that, good or bad, that they've had in their lives, right? And I asked them to kind of examine that. And then under the guise of, this is a tool to help you with writer's block. Because when you look at it, you have a list. I don't know what to write about. You have a list of 10 things right there. You don't necessarily have to put your name or make it about you. You can make it about someone else. So then they're looking at these circumstances through the eyes of a different character, or giving them the power to kind of take the power away from those circumstances. So those type of things, writing exercises help a lot. Also, like writing a scene, a two-person scene, a conversation between two people, and those type of things help a lot. So we try to keep an artistic lens in our programming, because it has shown that it's lacking in everyday programming in the CPS, and B is just an effective tool to help youth explore their identities and also gain the confidence to express themselves to a group of their peers and even people in power.
Yeah, I'm biased, but I'm a huge fan of theater games. And when you present it and introduce it as a game, you instantly get buy-in from the youth, right? So I made a note, but I will make sure I have a list of some of my favorite theater games in the resources as well that people can look over.
Nice.
David, what are some activities that you all have found have helped your youth build their social skills?
Sure. I would definitely say we do a lot of theater work and arts work in our program as well. In addition to theater games that you all talked about, we also do a lot of group art activities where we'll work together to make a group poem or a group mural. We did that. We created this wonderful crowdsourced poem back in June for Pride Month, where youth got to celebrate just who they were and where, and we gave them. There's a series of prompts that we use them to have them think about, about what made them the person they are today, and then we took they wrote them down on sticky notes, and then we put them up on a whiteboard, and then grouped them together and figured it out. And it was just a really great way for them to work together, collaborate, create something new together. And then we took that poem and we put it all together, and it's now like a permanent display, visual display in the youth space, which is really, really sweet. One thing we do on a regular basis and on an everyday basis, we do the same thing that we started this webinar with. We start every day of program with we call it an icebreaker. You know, an inclusion activity, whatever you want to call it. But basically what we do every time is we just sit in a circle, and we do a check-in and an icebreaker. A check-in is just to kind of take a temperature of where the youth are for the day. And so it could be anything like, give us a number that expresses how you're feeling today, and whatever that number means to you and why, or a color that expresses where you're at today, or an animal that expresses, you know, where you're at today. And sometimes the creativity that the youth give with those answers is amazing, and a lot of fun, and can lead to a lot of laughs as well. And then the icebreaker that we use is, we always have one up our sleeve in case the youth can't think of one, but we always ask for the youth to come up with it. And some of them are pretty crazy and a lot of fun. Some of them lead to heated discussions. But I found that by especially with the check-in, that starting with that, you know, it forces youth to actually verbalize and think about, you know, where they're at emotionally, mentally, physically, you know, and then to share that with the group. And you know, we always affirm it. You know, it doesn't matter. You could be feeling great, you could be feeling terrible, you could be feeling somewhere in the middle, and you have a right to that feeling, and that feeling is a-okay and accepted and welcome in this group. But I've definitely found that giving youth the opportunity to a structured opportunity where they're asked to express how they're feeling, it definitely invites youth to be open and honest about where they're at, especially when they're validated for whatever feeling that they happen to have.
So you all have shared a lot of great ideas and activities, things that you all do with your youth. Kind of switching and looking at it from the other direction, what are some things that you think has not worked in helping youth explore and develop their own identity? Or what are some things that maybe you've tried and you're like, you know what, that didn't work so well, I want other people to know, maybe don't go down that route, try something else?
We've been successful 100% of the time, every second of every day from day one. So, I'm sorry. Sorry, I wish I could help you.
Man, that's a good question. I mean, I not to joke around, but I was kind of struggling to find something. I think we kind of know ahead of time what's not gonna work, so we don't try it. So I don't have any proof of anything that didn't work. But yeah, I try to stay away from. I think when you lead with love and like validation, like David was saying, that's half the battle, because at least it opens the door to finding out what the issues are, or finding out what the entry point is, how we are to relate with these young people, with our young people that, yeah. So the Puerto Rican culture, one of the things, the tenets of the Puerto Rican Culture Center, and one of the like main things on their mission statement is to live and help to live. So cultural programming is very important to us, but also like neighborhood programming, learning where you are from and the history of the neighborhoods you live in. So that way they build a sense of responsibility for how their neighborhood looks and things like that. And so we do a lot of like social engagement, community work, right now, we're gearing up for like Halloween. We do a thing called Haunted Paseo. Paseo Boricua is Division Street, where our programming is located on. And so each program of the Puerto Rican Cultural Center decorates the street, and we have different stations. Our youth corridor has a haunted kind of little maze that we do, and the youth are the ones that built it and design it, and those type of things. We do in the summer for summer camp, we do a weekly cleanup of Paseo, where the young people are walking around and taking up garbage and watering the flowers, and it just builds civic engagement, and that's important.
I would say for us that first of all, those activities sound really amazing, and I would love to see those in action. That sounds like a lot of fun. Um, I think for us, it's a way for me to answer that question. A better way for me to answer that question is that um, uh, any activity that isn't youth centered would be one to avoid. Anyone that involves us trying to that involves like advice giving, or this is the way you should think about things, force feeding them information or belief systems. Anything that gives them the opportunity to explore, to question, to create on their own. Those are the kinds of things that we want to do. And also, we do have the luxury, since we are, not in a school, that we don't have a curriculum that we have to, provide. But once a quarter, we meet with the youth in those programs, and like, okay, what are some things you want to do in the next 3 months? What are some topics you want to discuss? What are some activities? Are there any guest speakers you want us to bring in? Are there any places you want to go? And then and we use that information to guide what we're going to be doing over the next couple of months. So I really feel, if you center youth in the decision-making process, center the youth in what you're doing, the activities, then you can't go wrong.
Thank you both. Before we open it up to questions, David, I know you had an activity that you were going to share with us, so I'll pass it over to you to talk about that activity.
Sure. Well, as a queer community center, where are we here? There we go. We love our flags. There is a pride flag for everything. And so one of the activity that we do with our youth, let me see if I can I share my screen? There we go. Share. Are you seeing a PowerPoint?
Yep,
Yes.
we see it. You're good.
All right, great. So this is the activity that we do. It's called create your own pride flag. It's really super simple, really super easy. It usually takes, depending on how much time you want to get the youth to draw and create, it could take anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. Also, it depends how much discussion you do. But all you need are some drawing materials, crayons, colored pencils, markers, paints, paintbrushes, whatever you want. Or you can use Xerox paper, construction paper, cardstock, or actual fabric to make actual flags and using with paints. And we start off by asking, youth, what is a community? What does that word mean to you? Having a discussion about that, and trying to, get youth to talk about that. Communities have, a sense of belonging, there's a something shared between people, and that it can be based on many different things, and where communities come from. And so we ask you to think about, what are some communities which they belong to? So we ask them to, in that conversation, asking them to think about different kinds of communities, their school, the neighborhoods they live in, faith-based communities they have, activity-based, are they gamers? Are other activities, team-based, like in sports that they play? Online communities, TikTok or Discord or other online communities that they're part of, are also identity based, based on their gender identity, their sexuality, where they're from, their ethnicity, their race. And we think about all those different kinds of communities that they belong to. And then we just give them a simple prompt, which is create a design that represents you and your communities. And then we give them time to draw them with however they're going to use, whether it's crayons or paint or whatever. And then if there is time, group sharing. And we do this in a couple of ways. One way is just, we go around and have youth share their flag with their entire group. And then another way we do it is pair sharing, where we have we have the youth pair up with another youth sitting next to them or another youth. And then in their partners, they share with their partner, this is my flag, this is what each of these things represents. And then the partner introduces the other person and their flag to the rest of the group. And then celebrate. If possible, we post the flags in the room, or if they want to take them with them, they can take them with them. So it's a very simple activity, but this is a way for them to think about, different communities they belong to, things that they're proud of, celebrate their uniqueness, get them the opportunity to express themselves in different ways, and just as a way to show pride in who they are and what makes them unique. And there you have it.
Great. Thank you so much, David, for sharing that. Really appreciate it. We have some time now, so I want to open it up to questions that our attendees might have. Thinking about everything that we talked about today. So we started with a little level setting on what SEL is. I shared Castle's definition. We looked at the wheel and the core competencies and the areas that it exists. Talked about why SEL in educational spaces is so important, why affirming youth identity is so important. And then in our panel discussion, we shared different strategies that you can employ to create welcoming spaces, different activities that you can do, your staff and your youth, to help them explore a little bit more about themselves and to engage in some youth socialization. So taking all of that into consideration, think of a question that you have. And you can feel free to either pop it in the chat, or I believe the Q&A is open. If you'd prefer to post it there, you can do that as well.
Don't all ask at once.
I always feel like I have to give the nice long teacher's pause. That first person, that first brave soul can kind of jump out here. Oh, here we go. Okay. What is your feeling about gendered bathrooms and the boy-girl lines at the elementary level? So I'm guessing that's like boys line up here, girls line up over here. David, you have some thoughts about that?
Yeah. I'm definitely we're finding more and more in the program that we do, especially in our programming with youth with families 0 to 11, that more and more youth are becoming more aware of and expressive of their gender identities at a much younger age than when I was growing up. We have youth in our program who are in nursery school and who have already made it clear to their parents that they are trans, or that they and when I say trans, I'm saying and they don't use those words. They use words that are those are words that are, they use the language that they have at that age. And so it's happening. And so I think as a society, that first of all, the younger generations definitely see gender as a much less binary thing, boys and girls, but more of a spectrum. So using binary things like boy lines and girl lines. It alienates all those people who are in the middle or not on that binary, and younger youth are more and more aware of that. And I think so. And I also know that there's also many other other reasons for the for classroom for management and for behavior your reasons for wanting but those are the things I think of. And in terms of gendered gendered bathrooms, it's CPS policy, and I fully support it. Is that all students in CPS schools have the right to go to the bathroom that affirms their gender identity, and I support that as well. That's the policy at CPS, and I support it.
Thanks, David. We had another question come in, and I love this. Do you involve families? And I'll expand on that. How do you involve families? Because I'm pretty sure I know what the answer is.
Yeah, I mean, we try to engage as much as possible with families. Also, part of our programming, we have someone that runs the after school program, like kind of like a teacher per se, but we also have a case manager mentor who does more of an assessing of needs and more of one-on-one conversations, talking about things like that. And so that person kind of engages with the family a bit more to find out ways to engage certain youth. What are the best ways that you get them to do what you ask? Those type of things. Also, we involve family in our events, and ask if they want to be involved with the programming of events, and we invite them to all of our events, like this haunted maze. We try to get them to be involved with as well.
So with us, we involve families in a variety of ways. We're actually looking to really expand our family programming. Right now, we have a once a month family series where we provide opportunities for LGBTQ plus families to get together to socialize, connect, network, share resources with each other in fun family-friendly activities. Everything from, in September, we had a bonfire at one of the beaches. We've had potlucks. We've had movie nights. This past weekend, we had our second annual Great Halloween Boo-tacular, where we had face painting and a spooky nail salon and a haunted house room and spooky arts and crafts. And so that's a way that that's something that we do for families with little ones. But our mentoring program, we've greatly involved families. The person who coordinates our mentoring program conducts monthly check-in calls with the parents of all the mentees to see how it's impacting them, if they notice any changes in their young person, if there are any problems that have been involved. So with our mentoring program, parents are involved on a monthly basis. And then we also have a support group for parents of trans and gender nonconforming youth, a monthly space where they can get together and talk about what's going on with them, share resources, process some of the emotions that come along with being a parent of a trans or gender nonconforming youth, or just a parent in general. Yeah, so those are some of the ways that we involve parents and families.
Great, thank you. And I'll just share from an SEL perspective. I think it can be really helpful to share with families the castle wheel, and you'll have that image and some of the descriptions with it along when you get the slide deck. But you're providing a common language for the people who are involved in your youth's and your students' life, so that when you're talking about these certain competencies that you're working on or trying to expand upon, the family and community can be a part of that and can understand where that's all coming from. So I definitely encourage you to share the castle wheel and some of those resources with your families. All right, cool. If you have any other questions, pop them in the chat, but I'm going to go ahead and move to our optimistic closure. So as I mentioned before, this is part of the, oh, I see another question in the chat. Hang on. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I really appreciate that. Yeah. Love, sharing other cultures with your youth too, right? So that they can explore and understand some of the other cultures that are probably in their neighborhood and in their city. So that's great. Thanks for sharing. So an optimistic closure, I think, is a great way to close any engagement you have, whether it's class with your youth or a staff meeting. It's a nice opportunity to kind of reflect, and it also touches on some of your social emotional learning skills. So this one is I'm curious about, and this helps kind of with goal setting and with summarizing the events you learned today and thinking about what your next steps might be. So all you have to do is finish this sentence in the chat. Based on all the things that we shared today and that we talked about today, what's something you're curious about? So just type in the chat, I'm curious about, and finish that sentence. Nice. We have, I'm curious about youth identity. Great. I hope we gave you some things to think about and some things to continue exploring and ways to help your youth understand their own identity. Curious about ways to apply SEL in various settings. Yeah. Curious about building a home, school, and community framework for success for all. I love that. Ooh, curious about the difference between growing up in Chicago and growing up in NYC. Feel free to keep putting those in the chat. I want to say thank you so much to David and Osvaldo for joining us and having this rich discussion. Thanks to Arlen for inviting us, and thanks to all of you for joining us here today. As I mentioned, we'll send out the slide deck with my last slide is a resources slide, so it's got all these links on it that you can access. And here's my contact info. If you want any more follow-up, please feel free to reach out. Oh, we have more curiouses about. Curious about our school district's view on gender and parents' reactions at the elementary level. Yeah, for sure. I know, Chicago definitely has sort of its own personality and its own approach to those, but I hope you can use that as maybe examples to bring back to your community. Curious about how to get students to buy into their own SEL. Yes, we've found that while the adults need to be intentional about the SEL you're doing, you don't necessarily have to say, hello, and today we're working on this core competency, but that it kind of comes naturally based on the activities that you choose to do and the way you choose to structure it. Curious about how students in poverty are able to thrive in Chicago. Oh, that's a whole separate webinar. But yeah, I think we could definitely share a lot of information on what that looks like. Okay, thank you all so much. Arlen, I'll pass it back over to you in this last minute.
Wonderful, Lesley. Thank you so much. We greatly appreciate our partnership with Act Now to bring you these webinars to our Ed Leaders Network platform. Thank you so much for bringing Osvaldo and David together to share their programs as well. This has been terrific information sharing. And I want to thank all of our participants as well for participating in all the activities and the chat here as we close. I'm going to stop the recording link now since we're all finished with questions.